So I think we are, I think we are live now. Can someone let me know if I am live, and I'll be pleased to see a thumbs up or something, um, or a heart, even better than a thumbs up. So we're talking about reality is fluid, and to some degree, this follows on from the video I put out earlier in the week called "Reality is Fluid." So we just want to make sure that everyone gets on. Okay, thank you. There's one. So whoever's watching, can you just give me just say who you are, or just say hi ho, so I know that we're functioning. It's nothing worse than it's nothing, it's nothing worse than spending an hour talking about stuff and realizing A, it wasn't recording, or B, there was nobody watching. Oh, good. Okay, so yeah, just say hi, just say hello, just so I can get a sense of what's going on, and also I can. Okay. I think we have people watching. Good. Deirdre, hi. Dave, hi. Malcolm, hi. Good. Um, good. Dave, hi. Right. So I've been working on this all day long, and actually I've been working on it for a number of days. Um, and it's the reason I've been working on it is just tricky because it's complicated. But that's the thing about hi Oliver. That's the thing about things which are profound. Well, profound things are difficult, but I want to explain it in a way that makes sense so that it's useful. Hi, Kirsty. So here's the thing. For much of my adult life, I've been interested in the nature of reality. And reality, if you're interested in mysticism, religion, all sorts of things, reality is an issue, okay? Hi, David. Hi. Um, because we think of reality as like, well, it's just what it is, right? Reality is what's outside the front door. Reality is what it is. The thing is, many people throughout the ages have suspected that that's not the case. And in fact, they're right. But hi, Karen, how does that help us? Well, I have come to the idea that uh, we need to have a bit more engagement with what we call reality, because that gives us a tool that we can use to change our experience. Now, I asked for origin stories, so I'm just going to start with those if you don't mind, because I see a commonality, and I want to just tease the commonality out of it, because I want to, if I can, hi Gillian, I want to, if I can, give you an explanation as to why these problems became problems, and that also, hi Amanda. So you may have seen on the Facebook group that some people posted origin stories for their problems. Let me just read a few, okay? I can pinpoint the origin of my anxiety as well as what exacerbated it. I was stung by an ant and had an extremely severe allergic reaction to it and almost died from anaphylactic shock. The doctor told me if I had been a few minutes later getting to the hospital, I definitely would have died. And just putting a bracket around that, that is such a common thing that I've heard people say who have post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's a really unhelpful comment, just so you know. That started my constant vigilance of my surroundings, my inability to be able to sit down outside, constantly looking at where I was walking, and my extreme terror if I felt anything that seemed like I might have something crawling on me. Okay, hypervigilance. After that happened, I started to have severe symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome, where I would suddenly feel dizzy, lightheaded. That was the exact feeling I had when I was stung. Now, I'd have said that's more likely to be panic, but fair enough. I was in and out of the emergency room, heart racing, palpitations, again panic. Blood pressure out of the roof every time that happened. Again, extreme and high anxiety. Fast forward to me splitting up with my boyfriend, living alone for the first time ever. I basically had a nervous breakdown. I was terrified. I would die alone because of my CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, made me feel so intensely horrible. I couldn't fathom how someone could feel so horrible and not be dying. I also started having thoughts of there'd be a trillion, gazillion little ant assassins just waiting to get me if I went outside. I became a total recluse at that point, left the house to get groceries and medications. Add in that I became disabled between the two events of chronic fatigue and ME, and I couldn't work, was bedbound for months, had to stop working. That was 30 plus years ago, and I still have it. I'm unable to do much of anything. That brought on the depression on top of the anxiety. The anxiety is lessened through CBT therapy, but I totally freak out if I see ants. It's left me feeling depressed, feeling useless, and many days hard to do anything. And then with some insight, I'd say that mine had its origins in childhood. Father abandoned us completely when I was 5. Mother was very proficient at health anxiety, something which I adopted unwittingly. And then it just goes on a little bit more. One day I collapsed into a broken mess of anxiety and depression. I would say that sounds really like a PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder reaction. Now, the characteristics of this, I think, that are interesting and important for what we're going to talk about are that this was an intensely physically impactful experience. So you had a strong physiological response to the anaphylactic shock, etc. That's fair enough, right? But you also had an extremely strong emotional, psychological response. And in principle, you had something that evoked an intense and high amount of fear. So I know you're on, Dave, so just let me know if that makes sense to you. And here's the question, because I'm going to ask you a question, so if you don't mind, see if you can answer this question for me. This event was a long time ago, but how long does it feel like it was? Okay, so Nasreen, hi. So can you say how long ago the ant sting was? And then can you say how long ago it feels like it was when you think about it? So that will just help us to make the point. So I'll just continue to talk while you just type that in, right? How long ago was it? When you think about it, how long ago does it feel like it was? Okay, there's two different things. So we have a really intense emotional experience. Now, your brain is determined to keep you safe because all of us are the inheritors of our ancestors staying safe, right? If your ancestors did not stay safe, we wouldn't be here. And so there's a real genetic and drive for us to stay safe, okay? Now, if you think that an ant is a threat, that's going to make you hypervigilant and it's going to make you really focus your attention on what the threat is. Now, the thing about ants is there's a lot of them. And so if you're always looking for ants, if you're looking for ants because an ant's a threat, you're always going to find them. So, okay. So it was 35 plus years ago, the ant attack. So it says, it's 35 years ago when I see an ant on me or get dizzy, I get dizzy, lightheaded, and I'm instantly right back in the moment. Okay. That's post-traumatic stress disorder, Dave. I don't know if you know that. That's what that is, right? Here's the thing. An intensely emotional event, you want to stay safe. That is a question. How do I stay safe? Well, you mentally rehearse ways in which you can stay safe. You mentally rehearse the catastrophic outcomes of not staying safe. You do all sorts of things. You manage your life accordingly, right? But basically, from that moment, and potentially a bit earlier on, if you like, from that moment, you started practicing being anxious. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to jump in too soon to this kind of point, but it seems like it might be an important time to do this. Your brain is always making this decision. It's called it's called source monitoring. Your brain is saying, is this an external event or an internal event? If it's an external event, it then goes through a little process of judging the validity of the event, right? So the Prime Minister is Boris Johnson. So if a little kid, a 3-year-old said, I don't like Boris Johnson, or a professor of economics says, I don't like Boris Johnson, you recognize that's an external event, but you evaluate the value of each of those, the relative value of each of those statements. And you might say, well, the little kid doesn't know anything, but a professor of economics knows some stuff. Okay, so maybe I'll pay attention. So you give more weight to that opinion, right? That's an external event. You also judge internal events, right? So if you think about something, your brain also says, is this an actual memory? Did this happen or did this not happen? Okay. Now, the experience that we're talking about, it actually happened. So it's an external event and it was judged to be a serious external event. Okay. but it has been replayed many, many times as an internal event. And it's been elaborated and fantasized, and it's been like turned into a life, almost a life narrative that constantly requires some action. So in a sense, it has been fantasized in the sense that it has been it's been rolled over in imagination many, many, many times. Now, here's the thing. There's a thing called imagination inflation. If you imagine something, it feels more likely that it actually happened in reality. So I want to make this distinction. If I ask you to imagine breaking a wooden toothpick 10 times, okay? Imagine breaking a wooden toothpick. Just imagine breaking a wooden toothpick 10 times. And a week later, I say to you, do you remember breaking the wooden toothpick? Did you break it or not? And you'll go, I'm not sure. If you did it 5 times, you'd go, I'm not sure. If you did it 10 times, you'd probably go, yeah, I broke it. You have created the impression of something actually happening through repetition in fantasy, in imagination. It's imagination inflation. So with all psychological problems, particularly ones where you're thinking about, you're elaborating something that potentially happened, you're actually reinforcing the original event, but you're also reinforcing alternative versions of it. I could have died. What would then when would that be like? Or it could happen again. What would that be like? You're elaborating versions of it, and it feels true because you're practicing it. So I've jumped around and I've done some stuff, but basically what I've said is that they've had a real event, extremely traumatic and frightening, and his brain, since that time, has continued to elaborate fantasies around that event, imaginations around that event, to such an extent that an ant can feel like a significant threat. Even though in regular life, certainly in the UK, an ant is not a significant threat. Okay, so an ant can feel like a significant threat because it's been this fear has been practiced, but it's not a significant threat. So I wanted just to draw that distinction, and I brought in this idea of imagination inflation because every psychological problem has a substantial element of that. So, and a lot of the cases that you've offered have similar elements, that they have an event which is then elaborated in mind and memory, and then the intensity of the experience is inflated through repetition and practice. So Nazreen says, I recently joined the group. I had postnatal depression 14 years ago and started having panic attacks. Fast forward over the years, I've suffered with anxiety, but I was managing okay. Since 2016, my anxiety started getting worse because of my perimenopause, and now it's developed into GAD and health anxiety, GAD being generalized anxiety disorder. And I have constant irrational thoughts most of the day. Okay. Now, the thing about panic is that a lot of the time we get stuck in the experience. Now, let me bring in the next important point with respect to this reality is fluid. You think you are in control of your life. And of course you are, but you're not. Let me give you an example. Hi, Alison. I have the intention, let's say I form the intention of kicking a ball, and I kick the ball. Okay. Now, me intending to kick the ball and kicking the ball are so close together that it feels like I actually intended to do it, and it was something. Hi, Jenny. And it was something that I intended to do. Okay. But when you rig me up to a machine that looks at the electrical activity in the brain, you get something that's called a response potential, and my intention to kick the ball was triggered approximately a half a second before I was aware that I was going to kick the ball. So what this means is that everything I say, think, or do is pre-planned in my brain before I'm aware of it. Now, I hope that makes sense, because it's actually true. It's been well tested. It's not like It's not something which, it's just, I'm not talking about angels. I'm not making this up in a sense. This is the neuroscience. Your brain creates and, your brain creates the experiences you have before you're aware of them. The bit of you that you think of as you simply takes ownership over it. Okay? So, 99%, let's say, I don't know the exact figure, but it's going to be about 99%. 99% of what happens in your brain is unconscious. It's below awareness, right? We can call it unconscious, we can call it subconscious. It's below awareness. The 1%, let's say, that is consciousness, is the bit I say, well, this is me, right? That 1% is not in charge, but it thinks it is, because that 1% takes ownership of everything that my unconscious brain makes happen. But my unconscious brain makes it happen, creates it before the bit of me that calls I, is aware of it. So we're always living in the past, about a half a second behind. I'm a half a second behind my brain deciding to say something, deciding to do something. Now, the reason it happens is because if I was to decide to do something like I wanted to be popular at a party, right? There are so many things that I need to take into account to be able to do that. I need to think about who's there, what past experiences have I had, what kinds of things might I say, what am I good at, what's funny, what's not funny, blah, 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 right? So it's way more complicated than I can figure out in that 1% of me that's conscious. Oh, okay. So Jenny says, same thing happens to core muscles, which contract before you're even aware that you're going to make a move. Well, in fact, Jenny, that's exactly the thing. Your brain is prepared to make a move before you're aware of making a move. Okay, great, super. So your brain does the massive amount of calculations necessary to do anything, and I go, well, yeah, I said that. I'm funny, it's my joke. And of course it is, but it's not my conscious joke, right? It's not me consciously making a joke. Let me have a little drink. Now with panic, what happens is that the experience of panic is so intense that people get trapped in the experience. And so instead of saying, which would be legitimately true, panic is a catastrophic overestimation of threat, which it is, okay? People go, oh yeah, I'm sweating, I feel dizzy, I can't cope, I'm going to faint. But we sort of get locked into the experience, and then we kind of don't go past that, right? So we don't problem solve, we just experience it, and then we try our best to not experience it again, which basically means organizing our lives, around staying safe, etc. So the postnatal depression, created a sense of threat, which then becomes the thing which kind of captures our attention. And so, in a sense, we don't necessarily do anything about it in the moment. Now, because everything that you experience is pre-done in your brain, right? It's all run on automatic pilot. And we can say, hi, Julie, and we can say that many of the psychological problems we have are inappropriate programs running in here. So let's say with panic, there is absolutely no need to have a panic attack. It serves no purpose. It is not something, it's not evolutionarily adaptive, it's not useful, it's absolutely nothing, right? What it is the fight or flight response that you would normally expect as a response to an external threat being inappropriately applied where there is no external threat. And so you have a massive flood of stress hormones, but you've got nothing to do with it. You can't run, there's nothing to fight. And so you have a panic attack. Now, a panic attack won't hurt you, but if you get stuck with just the experience of panic, then you're not actually going to be able to do anything to change your experience. Deirdre says, not feeling enough, and then it spirals into many different needs for survival. Okay. That's when the shit hit the fan. It exploded into so many aspects of my life. Now I can see a lot more clearly and I'm taking 100% responsibility for myself and my fears. We are a work in progress. You're absolutely right. But not feeling enough is a trick of the brain, isn't it? It's like saying it's underestimation. For various reasons. It's like saying I'm 5'5", but I only feel like I'm 4'8". Right? It's like saying I feel less than I am. So I call that underestimating yourself, right? I feel less than I am. Now, feeling is powerful stuff. Emotions are powerful things. And if you feel less than you are, the feeling is going to direct your attention and it's going to actually make you do stuff. And that then becomes the habit. It becomes just the habit of thought, the habit of action, of not, just not pushing yourself forward or feeling that, it's just, there's no point in a sense. Gillian says, I was diagnosed with depression when I was around 5, which is early. Remember being given yellow pills with coloured bits in them. I think school triggered for me. I hated going to school and did right up until I left. As mentioned before, my dad was manic depressive. I'm not as bad as he was, although I have some very dark periods. Well, manic depression, of course, does have a genetic link. But I would always say it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. And therefore, everything that I'm saying now is relevant to that, challenging that. Karen, dreadful experience at the dentist when I was 3 years old, bullied at school. Those 2 events caused my anxiety and depression. Did they? Did those 2 events cause your anxiety and depression? Or did they set you up to be anxious and depressed? You see, when events happen, when things happen, we form beliefs about them. And those beliefs help us to make sense of the experience. Now, a lot of the time, much of what we believe is wrong. We don't know it's wrong, but, it's wrong. Now, an example would be, this has been a recent thing in Britain. It's not current right now, but a recent thing would be Brexit. Okay. Now the question is, do we want to be in or out of the European Union? Okay. Now, the people who want to be out believe that being out's the best thing. The people that want to be in believe that being in's the best thing. Neither is completely right, because it's an opinion based on like a vast array of different kind of pieces of information. And actually, in my opinion, most people are relatively ill-informed, actually. And it's actually an emotional argument, and the facts are really sort of here or there. So that would be a belief system that directs our behavior and directs what we do. But it doesn't mean that the things that we believe are actually, literally true, right? Very little is an actual fact. And I use the experience of I use gravity. You'd think that gravity was a fact. But if you look into quantum physics, we think gravity sucks, right? But I think in quantum physics, the idea is that space moves up to hit stuff. So, there's an alternative explanation for gravity, and I don't pretend to understand it. Okay, so to summarize the origins of some of these problems, now just name check Lucy. Tonsillitis, worried it would never go away, catastrophic thinking started. Okay. And of course, Alison, 2 episodes when she was 50, triggered by her husband's health anxiety, and discovered she had cancer, sent me to deep depression and anxiety. Okay, so I'm sorry to hear about that. All right, so reality is fluid. What do? You believe that you are in control of your life. The problem with that is, A, you're not. Okay? The bit of you that says, I am me, you're not in control. You experience what your brain gives you, and then you take ownership of it. That's the first thing that we need to really understand, because it's actually true. By all means, look into it, and if you want some references and some papers, I can, hunt it down yourself rather than me do the work, right? It's true. Now, and yet, we can learn, and we can do some stuff that's different. It's not that whilst we work on autopilot, it's not that we have no choice. For instance, I could drive to work, but intend to buy milk on the way home, and I could buy milk on the way home. All I'm saying is that before I actually stop to buy milk, my brain has intended to stop to buy milk. Before I put my card in the card thing to pay for the milk, my brain has activated the muscles necessary to do the action. So I don't have free will in the sense that I am not necessarily the one that's creating the experience, but my whole unity, my body is. Okay. So I am witnessing what my brain gives me. Our problem is that we accept what our brain gives us as valid. So if you have panic, you accept that you have panic, and then you organize your life to avoid panic. If you're depressed, you probably accept, you feel that there's something wrong with you. You feel like you're not good enough. You feel that you can't do things very well. You think that nothing's ever going to change. There's nothing you can do. You feel helpless. You feel hopeless. Okay, well, your brain's giving this to you, and you're experiencing it, and that it typically just stops there, right? Oh, there's nothing I can do. So what we have to recognize is that your brain gives you this experience, you accept it, but doesn't make it true, and we have to challenge it. And we have to challenge it sufficiently so that we get some actual control over the future of our life. So many of the people who've sent in these things, and I've spoken to lots and lots of people, and they would say, I've been depressed or anxious for very many years. Okay, so the first thing is this. If you've been depressed or anxious for many, many years, if you continue to do the same thing, nothing much is going to change. I think that's fair, isn't it? Okay, and I'm offering the possibility that if we think about our experience, our reality a bit differently, we can become the author of our destiny, okay? So to shorthand it, what I'm going to suggest is that we need to recognize that our experience is simply a version of reality that we are being given by our brain through habits of thought, through patterns and programs that it is running. Now, an example. If you're a perfectionist, you would tend to think that things need to be perfect, or they're a failure, they're not good enough, they're just useless, right? Now, that is a black and white way of thinking, right? Nothing is perfect, nothing is a failure. There is no actual perfection, there is no actual failure, okay? But if that was a program that you're running in here, then everything that you experience and you do will be filtered through that program, and you're not going to believe that you have any choice in doing something different, right? So being a perfectionist is a really classic high stress situation, to be honest. And if you believe that that's just what it is, just how I am, then nothing's going to change. So we need to create a firm intention about what we want to achieve in the future. I think without a firm intention, it's very easy for the habits of thought, for the programs that we run in the brain, just to continue to take charge of you. So I would say to you, for instance, if you believe that you are in control of your life, why are you still anxious or depressed? And you say, well, I don't want to be anxious or depressed. And I say, well, okay, well, what are you doing about it? Well, there's nothing. What can I do? Exactly, okay. So the answer to the question is, why are you still anxious and depressed? The answer is because you're still running programs that give you that experience. So Dave says, well, if you come to terms with the past, but still have the learned habits of depression and anxiety as a powerful influence in your life. Okay. Well, in that case, you're just left with the programs of anxiety, right? Overestimation of threat, underestimation of strengths and resources. Anxiety, overestimation of threat. Depression, underestimation of strengths and resources. Overestimation of faults and feelings. You're just left with those programs. But if you say that thinking about an ant or seeing an ant takes you right back to that experience, you haven't come to terms with it. It's still a powerful force, and it needs to be extinguished. The emotion needs to be taken out of the memory so that it starts to behave like a normal memory, and it starts to feel like it's history, as opposed to being something which is constantly reinvigorated. Anyway, when we take ownership of the programs and processes that we're running in automatic pilot, we can then determine what we want for our future. So the first thing is we create a goal of what we want to achieve. This is not a goal. I wish I wasn't anxious. I wish I didn't have panic attacks. I wish I wasn't depressed. Not a goal, right? That's just going, I have this experience. I wish I didn't have this experience. Okay, not a goal. Goal, I am not going to be anxious anymore. In 6 months' time, I'm not going to be anxious. In 6 months' time, I'm not going to have panic. In 6 months' time, I'm not going to have depression. Goal, right? You establish a goal, and with the goal, you create a sort of what we might call a path towards achieving the goal, right? So, goal, path towards achieving the goal, where you are now. So where you are now, path towards achieving the goal. You get on that path and you change the programs that you have in here that are running behind the scenes. And if you have the experience of panic or have the experience of anxiety, you go, you know what? That's just my brain giving me these experiences because I'm still running the old programs and I don't need to run the old programs. So we've always got to challenge the validity of the programs and processes that create the problems you have. Nobody, and I mean, within parameters, nobody needs to be depressed, anxious. Nobody needs to have panic attacks. No one really needs to be stressed, to be honest. But you need to know how to retrain your brain to stop giving you these experiences. So I want to summarize. I don't want to sort of end up getting too waffly. Panic, anxiety, depression, stress are created by programs that are running unconsciously, that are running in your brain. You simply get the outcome of them and you go, oh, panic, oh, anxiety. Okay. Typically, that's where you stop. We have to go, my brain is running programs that I do not wish to have, and I have decided I will not be anxious. In 6 months' time, I will defeat anxiety. Okay, that's a goal. We get on a path to achieving that goal. From where I am now, path to achieving the goal, reach the goal. But we have to do something different. And that different thing is we have to constantly challenge the unhelpful programs which are in here. And we do that by learning, in the bit of us that's conscious, we learn that our experience is not valid, and we learn different ways of being in the world so that it gives us an opportunity to change those programs. So for instance, a common one that we use here in self-help CBT is, I am safer than I feel I am, because you are. Okay. You're a good person, you have value, you do the best you can, you probably do. And lots of other things, right? The problems that you have persisted because you have practiced them in fantasy so many times that they feel real. And in fact, there's an idea that I've got here, which is repetition makes problems stronger. And stronger problems feel more real, more intense, and more troubling. Okay? Repetition makes problems feel stronger, and stronger problems feel more real, more intense, more troubling. But that's because you've been practicing them. And when you practice something, even if it's not even true, if you practice something enough, it feels true. Interestingly, I think I mentioned it last week or the week before, that people believe stuff more, even though when they first hear it, they're told it's not true, the more times they hear it. And that's the basis for the fake news, the actual fake news, the management of the media, manipulation of elections, and the tarring of political candidates. You simply say stuff enough, and even if people don't believe it, it turns out that they believe it to be more true. So, I think my thing's just jiggling a little bit. So I've been talking for 35 minutes, which is quite a lot. I just wanted to get this out, and I hope it's been coherent sufficiently for you to be able to follow the argument that we just need to make sure that we get on the path to reaching a firm goal, and it's almost guaranteed. As long as you do the work, it's almost guaranteed that you get there. So obviously, self-help CBT is the path that I advocate because it's the one that really works very well. To do that, get into the Anxiety Wizard program, and that will get you on the path certainly towards getting rid of panic, anxiety, depression, and stress from your life. If you have any problems, let me know. leaves comments in Facebook. And I'm going to do a Facebook Live next week, I think at the same time. I've been told that doing it at the same time every week is a good thing. So I shall do a Facebook Live next Thursday at 7 o'clock. And if we have a topic that you'd be interested in, let me know. Or if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you for taking the time to tune in tonight. And I will say good night. This video will be available, I think, on YouTube probably tomorrow.